We are back following the contentious phone call between President Trump and Georgia's Secretary of State. It is another attempt by Trump to get the election results overturned. An election he lost thanks to millions of voters in Georgia who voted for Joe Biden. And with the help of activists dedicating time and energy to turn out black voters in the state, despite the raging pandemic and concerns over voter suppression. With me now, Reverend Al Sharpton. He's the president of the National Action Network and host of MSNBC's Politics Nation. Rev, is there something specific to the state of Georgia that makes it so hard for President Trump to come to terms with the fact that he lost the state?
I think that when you look at the history of the state of Georgia, when you look at the fact that Joe Biden was able to defeat him in a state that Republicans have been winning for many years, and then the symbolism of the state in the voting rights movement, a voting rights that Donald Trump tried to undermine in every way he could. This is a state that gave us Dr. Martin Luther King and Reverend Hosea Williams and John Lewis. I think this is of particular significance to him. And when you listen to the audio tape, he is not inquiring whether anything was done wrong. He's instructing, find me voters, find me votes that would put me over the top, which is in effect saying disenfranchise the actual vote that happened. I think it would be frightening if it wasn't for the fact that we have to give credit to that Secretary of State and others that refuse to go against the rule of law, even though they may put, in many ways, stand against many of the things politically many of us agree with.
And kept asserting over and over again that the conspiracy theories that the president was citing were simply not true. There was so much in this call, Rev, that we could talk about, but there was something that I just don't feel like we've heard enough about, which is the president's fascination, it seemed to me, with Stacey Abrams. Take a listen to this one clip.
Stacey Abrams is laughing about, she's going around saying these guys are dumber than a rock. What she's done to this party is unbelievable.
What do you think is that obsession with Stacey Abrams?
He is obsessed with a black woman that has been able to mobilize and galvanize a voting base that has rendered him a loser, and that has shown that if you build across generational and racial lines, you can win even in the Deep South. And she's a symbol of everything he is afraid of. It's like his worst nightmare coming alive, personified by Stacey Abrams. And he's right, because she's representing the best of democracy, while he is attempting a non-military coup, and we hope it remains non-military. I'm happy to see former defense people come out, defense officials of the U.S. government, saying that military cannot be used. We have no idea the boundaries that this man has, and we should not underestimate his quest to remain in power.
Rev, he keeps saying two things about voters in Georgia. He keeps saying that they're angry, and he keeps saying that they won't vote. Which voters do you think he's talking about?
I think he's talking about his supporters. I think he's talking about the extremists that refuse to look at reality, people that feed into conspiracy theories that many of them have fabricated themselves. But if they believe it, we do not know the boundaries of what they would do. We're talking about a president that has called for people to rally on the 6th, while there are those that are in the U.S. Senate that are saying that they will oppose the certification of the Electoral College. This is unprecedented at a time that this country ought to be uniting around the will of the people that was shown at the polls November 3rd. For our country to be sitting at the edge of this kind of disaster and display of those that hold the rule of law in contempt is something we expect in other countries that we've lectured and even fought. You do not expect it in the United States, and it should not be tolerated now.
Reverend Sharpton, as always, thank you for joining us.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.